You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to another episode. I am here today to save you. People are dying from misinformation. Not necessarily fraudulent information or false information or intentional disinformation, but misinformation. So the more I think about it, and the more they refuse to define what misinformation is, I'm finding that it must be just things that are not agreeable to one particular political party. Because today on the Johnny Brew Show, I'm going to talk to you about a lot of, I want to call it misinformation, but it doesn't fit the aforementioned definition, does it? This is information that the Progressive Party embraced and loved. So I guess that would be disinformation or false information perpetrated on the American public, either intentionally or unintentionally. If you consider it unintentional, it doesn't make a lot of sense because these are mostly coming from journalists. These are going to be videos from the Washington Post, from CNN, and really what's supposed to be considered trusted news sources. So I think that should carry a lot more weight than some idiot like me in my basement posting the factual information from the VAERS report or from anything that might not be sourced from the Washington Post or CNN. But let's first realize how misinformation connects to the top news stories. Now this right here, you're about to see an incredible work of journalism. All right? This is the watchdog from one of the most prominent worldwide leaders in news. And this is from the watchdog of all media outlets. And this gentleman, who is highly, highly respected in the progressive media propaganda campaign of the Democratic Party. He is Brian Stelter, the media watchdog from CNN, and he's going to explain to us how misinformation connects all the stories. And that way we could get off to a good start and you could actually know how misinformation works. Play tape.
Right, this next segment might make you a little hungry, okay? I'm going to tell you how a newsroom is like a sandwich. This is my lunch. I just pulled it out of the fridge. Ham and cheese on whole wheat. All these ingredients taste just fine on their own, but they are a whole lot better together. So how is a newsroom like a sandwich? Well, let's say the people covering politics are the meat. Okay, this looks a little bit gross on its own, right? Let's say the people covering science and medicine are the cheese. Okay, I disassembled an entire sandwich for you all. Others are the lettuce and the tomato and the mustard. It's all tasty on its own, but you need the bread to make it work. A sandwich is not a sandwich until it's all put together. And the news landscape works the same way. You think I can still eat this, leader? I'll put that over there. The news landscape is like a sandwich because some of the biggest beats today, from politics to science and health to crime and justice, they are all connected by the war that's raging, this information crisis that's raging, this sense that people can choose their own reality. Whether it's disbelief about election results, or it's distrust of public health officials, or it's disregard for democratic principles. It's all connected. These stories are connected. And that's why you need the proverbial bread. You need newsrooms and anchors and columnists and others to connect it and to bring it all together and explain the links. I think this is a major challenge for the press right now because, you've got one team of fact checkers covering misinformation about the vaccines, and then you have another team of people covering the fight for voting rights. But these stories are linked in ways that help people understand what's actually happening, understand this war on truth that's been raging for years. I mean, it's easier for people to, tune in to an opinionist an entertainer who just tries to fill in the blanks by asking questions and dodging the facts, rather than try to connect dots and explain how this media landscape, this news environment, is connected in its different strands of war on truth. Look, I bring up Tucker Carlson. I put him on screen there because he's a part of a political party that's taking advantage of this war on truth and creating an alternative reality. So in this environment, how do we all make healthier sandwiches?
I mean, that is some hard-hitting journalism right there. He brings up Tucker. He brings up Tucker. And Tucker cites all his sources. He is an opinion newscast. But he is so diligent in connecting the dots. He would never do some stupid thing like take out a sandwich to show you how crooked the other side of the media is. I don't even know how this guy still has a job. He brings up our health officials. All right? I mean, do you remember when we finally hit, I think it was 3,000 COVID deaths in our country back in March of 2020 or April of 2020? All we heard about is how that's the equivalent of 9/11. Do you remember when we hit all these numbers? They kept making these equivalencies, and we had the tracker on the side of the screen. But if you were to bring up when we hit 2,000 reported deaths on the VAERS system, the CDC's reporting system for vaccine adverse reactions, you would be called fake news, or you would be deleted for misinformation when you're simply citing what the government is providing us for. And before COVID hit, it was understood by most people in health, the health officials, that the VAERS reporting system usually represents about 10% of the actual numbers. Now, like I said, I'm not even going to be able to bring up all my sources and everything because I'm a dude in his basement. But that would be considered misinformation. Meanwhile, Tucker, who's providing his sources and just quoting CDC officials, is considered misinformation. Now, I just want to go over what I would consider some of the most damaging and hurtful misinformation we've heard over the past few years. And let's not forget, when I point out some of these falsehoods, some of these very intentionally misleading stories, let's remember what Psaki said, that we should be not only banning them from their YouTube channel, but also from their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram, their ability to post on CNN or Washington Post, and I don't even know what other social media platforms Psaki's referring to. But if we're going to go that route, let's start with some of the most damaging misinformation stories that we've heard lately. First of all, let's go to these fine people talking about Trump defending Nazis. Play tape.
Trump got a lot of criticism after the violence broke out in Charlottesville, Virginia. And he originally said that, hey, there's violence on both sides. Later on, he finally released a statement 48 hours later condemning the white supremacists who carried out the acts of violence. However, now it seems like he's taking that statement back. In fact, he believes that there are members of the alt-right that are wonderful people.
On both sides, sir? You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
All right, Anna, I have a thought on this too. Na 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 na. This guy is so fucking done. So you're telling me that you're going to tell the American people, those guys who showed up with Klan torches to support a Confederate statue, if it was just a Confederate statue, yes, that's your portion of Trump's base who's like, yeah, Confederacy's awesome, Southern heritage, whatever, right? And they don't want to complete the thought and what was the Confederate heritage all about. I know that's a decent chunk of the American people. But then you had the guys with swastikas, you had the guys showing up with Klan outfits, you had the guys who were white nationalists, white supremacists. It was unite the right. Of all the loathsome things on the right, if that's Trump's version of the right wing, I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of right wingers in America who go, no, I didn't sign up for that. I'm not going to a Klan rally with torches. And he just put me in the same group. Is he saying that I'm part of that? No. So look, I'm not as, he's way worse to the right wing than I am, which is amazing. Because I actually think that there's a decent chunk of the right wing that doesn't believe in that at all. But he thinks that's you guys. He thinks that rally was uniting the right. That, oh yeah, I mean, you got the Klan and the Nazis and you got the good guys like the white nationalists. Where the hell were the good guys on that side? No, man, this guy's supporting Nazis. This is crazy. He's gone, man. This is not America. If I'm wrong about that and it turns out America is pre-World War II Germany, well, then we're all screwed. But I don't think so. I think we're a way, way better country than that. And even a majority of the right-wingers who are gonna at some point raise their hand and go, I'm not part of the freaking Klan, man.
All right, there's another wonderful media organization, the Young Turks, all right? They start out by saying that Trump said alt-right are wonderful people. And then they play the quote, he never said that. Then the other dude says that the Trump is encouraging people to join the Klan and carry torches. Again, 100% fabricated. I mean, I could explain to you what Trump said, but you know what would really help everybody? If we were able to hear the entire context of what Donald Trump was saying. All right, let's give Donald Trump an opportunity to speak for himself instead of having these blasphemous jerks who use four-letter words on professional newscasts. These people are disgusting, and for them to point finger, it is the ultimate form of projection. Let's hear what Donald Trump said in his entirety so we could all get context into exactly what he was saying, because what he was saying is absolutely true. Play tape.
What you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
It's on both sides, sir. You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as deodorant. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group. Excuse me. I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
Robert E. Lee are not the same.
Well, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
I do love
Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, are we going to take down his statue? So you know what? It's fine. you're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
All right, I mean, Trump's biggest problem is his understanding of textuality. He's not trying to paint the left as entirely evil people. But you notice from the clip before this, the progressive media is trying to paint the right as entirely bad people. Trump explains there were people who were good people who wanted to see the statues come down, that had honest, good intentions. There's people who were there that wanted the statues to stay up, and they had good and honest intentions. And the day before, when the protest, peaceful protest was happening, of which the right side had permits and the left didn't, it was peaceful. There were people speaking their mind about why it should stay up, why it should come down. Then you also had people on the left that were agitators that showed up in masks and helmets and clubs. There were white nationalists and white supremacists. All of them were there. I mean, what are there, like 500 KKK members in the United States now and 1,000 white supremacists? I mean, when the Democrats were using the KKK as their political military arm, there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of KKK members. All right? If you want to pretend the lie that the right has inherited the KKK, well, obviously, we're not as good at racism as you are, Democrats, because we can't build up the racist foundation that you guys were able to assemble when you guys were publicly flaunting the KKK as part of your political arm. Also, do you see the difference? There's texture. Nothing is black and white. And Trump is trying to feel that texture out, to explain it, to show that every individual interaction is just that, an individual interaction. All right? Same thing with January 6th or the riots of the summer of 2020. You know, people are individuals and they are responsible for their actions. All right? And anybody who went to the Capitol on January 6th in order to breach it should pay the price. Anybody who went to a courthouse or a Best Buy with a Molotov cocktail in order to breach it should be held accountable. Yet, unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. And I don't want to compare the two. I go out of my way not to conflate January 6th with the summer of 2020 because they're two totally different situations. I know it's easy to compare the accountability of the people who were involved in both things, but we need to try to keep those things separate and not conflate the two as much as we tend to do. Anyway, let me let Trump finish because he is speaking on his own merit, and I'm not trying to hyperbolize or dissect or interpret his meeting. You guys can do that on your own. Finish the tape.
Treated unfairly, sir. I'm sorry. I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly?
No,
I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day, it looked like they had some rough, bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, you know, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this. There are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment. But there are two sides to the country. Does anybody have a final?
You know, And again, I go back to the point. Trump is trying to be as textualized and as truthful as possible. And he should win the hearts and minds of the American people. The problem is the American people weren't listening to his entire comments. They were only listening to the hyperbolized nature and the quick clickbait that the propaganda media was supplying. All right, let's move on. Then we had we had the Steele dossier, my wife's favorite piece of news since she moved to America. She loved hearing about the dirty dossier all the time. Let's recall and just notice all these clips I'm playing you. There's no fact check warnings. These things are still available online. I just did the research this morning to find all these clips. These things are still available, but meanwhile, there's people who have been permanently kicked off of Facebook for talking about the lab leak theory or talking about how the Steele dossier is false. Please, let's recall the misinformation that was peddled nationwide 24/7 on the American media. Play tape.
The Trump dossier is about much more than just a P-tape. That was one kernel in a giant bushel of accusations uncovered by investigator Christopher Steele through months of work and intel contacts. The 35-page document exploded onto the scene January 10th, 2017, when BuzzFeed published it in all of its raw, unvetted infamy. That was just 10 days before Donald Trump's inauguration. BuzzFeed made its move right after CNN reported that the directors of national intelligence, the FBI, CIA, and NSA were all aware of the findings and figuring out exactly how to share them with the incoming president. In the end, Comey did the honors. As far as the financing involved, the Democratic Party's lawyer hired political research firm Fusion GPS to produce the dossier, which then, in turn, enlisted the services of foreign British intelligence officer Christopher Steele to do the legwork at his firm, Orbis. According to The New Yorker, Steele's employees then worked with collectors who are well-connected to people across continents, industries, and agencies. They then retrieved information from their own well-placed sources. Quote, "These sources occasionally receive favors, such as helping getting their children into Western schools, but money doesn't change hands because it could risk violating laws against, say, bribing government officials or insider trading. Paying sources might also encourage them to embellish." Now,
all right, so you notice that this is originally funded by the DNC, all right, which is obviously a political arm representing the Democratic Party. They hired a firm who hired another firm and a bunch of spies who then hired hundreds, if not thousands, of spies all across the world just to dig up dirt on Trump. How much money do you think they spent? And then at the end they're saying, oh, we don't pay cash favors. All right, first of all, there's hundreds of people who their job is to be a spy. And they're all getting paid. And all that money is originated from the DNC. All right, that's what they're spending their money on. And we all know, in the end, Christopher Steele, who put the dossier together, said none of this has been verified and he will not stand by it himself. Yet for 2 years, this is all we heard about. Now, as we play the rest of the clip reminding us what was in the dossier, notice how many of the things have never been verified. Play tape.
Now the findings. First, the golden shower, certainly the most salacious and questionable allegation. Mr. Trump, according to this story, was staying at the Moscow Ritz-Carlton and asked prostitutes to perform a golden shower urination show on the bed where President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama had slept. The possibility of a videotape was raised, but nothing ever turned up there. Even Steele says the veracity of this part is probably iffy. Here's a rundown of some of the less sensational dossier elements and where they stand today. Russia cultivated Trump as a political candidate for at least 5 years. That's unverified. It's clear that Russians with Kremlin connections tried for years to deepen business and cultural ties, even making numerous attempts to connect with Trump officials during the campaign. But as for directly pushing the businessman to become a candidate, that's not been proven. The Kremlin targeted educated youth and swing state voters during its cyber attacks. Verified. This has been proven by congressional investigators into Russia's misinformation campaigns. Trump campaign advisor Carter Page met with representatives of Russian state-owned oil giant Rosneft. That's verified. The House Intel Committee released a transcript of Page's testimony revealing he did meet with Rosneft officials during a trip to Moscow in 2016. A wealthy Azeri businessman knew details about business bribes Trump had allegedly paid in Russia. Unverified. Evidence to this has never surfaced. The Kremlin allegedly offered lucrative real estate deals to Trump to help win him over. That's unclear also. The Trump Organization did sign a letter of intent in 2015 to build Trump Tower Moscow, but the project was scuttled in January 2016. But when it comes to just money, Eric Trump reportedly told a journalist in 2014, and later denied, quote, "We don't rely on American banks. We have all the funding we need out of Russia." Also, Trump's lawyer worked as an intermediary between Trump and Russia. Unverified. A trip by Trump attorney Michael Cohen to Prague in August 2016 to meet with Kremlin associates has not been substantiated. Cohen's repeatedly denied that claim, and he provided reporters with photos of his passport to show he had never traveled to Prague. Trump's team knew about Russian plans to deliver DNC emails to WikiLeaks and agreed to sideline Russian intervention in Ukraine as a campaign issue. That's also unverified. We know for sure Trump's good friend Roger Stone knew about WikiLeaks. It remains to be seen whether then-candidate Trump was in the loop also. So that's where some of the biggies stand today. Meanwhile, the Senate Intel Committee and Special Counsel Robert Mueller continue their investigations.
Mueller continued his investigation, and guess what? Nothing. Zero. All right, the House Intel Committee, the Senate Intel Committee, Robert Mueller's special committee, nobody found any wrongdoing. And from that Steele dossier, I'm telling you, millions and millions and millions of dollars paid people, hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary, stipends, help getting into Western schools. You want to know why your kid can't go to Duke? Because some spy knew some spy who knew some spy who was going to help get his kid in because he provided some false information about golden showers in President Obama's former hotel room. I mean, it's freaking ridiculous. The two things that were verified, that Carter Page spoke to a businessman in Russia, and that Eric Trump says that if he can't get a deal done with an American bank, he might use a foreign bank. I mean, that's what they paid the millions and tens of millions of dollars to find out. But meanwhile, front page news every day, 24/7 for 2 years came from this Steele dossier, of which none of it was verified, and a lot of it was proven true, proven false, and almost none of it was proven true. And that was the basis for all the Trump hate in the very beginning. From mischaracterizing his words in Charlottesville to the stupid dossier that was just a work of fiction. And still to this day, people hate Trump because of those two things. It's really not fair. And you had people, this is after the Mueller investigation wrapped up, and you still have this guy Adam Schiff, and notice behind him, the guy who's sleeping with the Chinese spy. I don't know if he was sleeping with her at this moment or just shortly before this moment, but Swalwell's behind him. Same with that dude to Schiff's left. They're all evil, lying people. And if anybody should be losing their access to any type of media, it's these people. Listen to what Adam Schiff said after it was proven that he went on every single talk show, and it was really, I couldn't find what I was really looking for because they've deleted it. Because these Democrats are changing history right before our eyes. Not only by taking down statues and taking out the work of Homer and Aristotle out of our school systems, which is the philosophers are the reasons why we created our country the way we did. All right, ancient Greece had a true democracy that didn't work. Roman Empire had a republic democracy which worked. Now, we are a more perfect union than the Romans, but why did we follow that model instead of the Greek model of total democracy? Because total democracy simply does not work. It leads to hysteria. And if we don't learn from these great philosophers who helped form our American way of life, we're going to lose our American way of life. That's why we taught these people in school, and we can't be getting rid of them and replacing them with Ibram X. Kendi, or whatever his name is, or the 1619 Project. These are not knowledge. This is not intelligence. This is not wisdom. This is just some idiotic work of fiction, just like the Steele dossier. Nonetheless, here's Adam Schiff telling the American people he has evidence that he's going to release. 3 years later, we still haven't received it. Play tape.
Last night, the majority on the Intelligence Committee made the decision to prematurely shut down the Russia investigation, the only authorized investigation in the House of Representatives into what the Russians did in the last election, what the U.S. government response was, and the issue of any coordination or collusion with the Trump campaign. That was a terrible disservice to the country and the American people, and represented a reneging on the commitment that was made at the outset of the investigation to follow the facts wherever they lead. We will be putting together a report that will set out for the country what evidence we have seen to date, what evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian hacking and dumping operation, what evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian social media campaign, their paid media campaign, and yes, the issue of collusion with the Trump campaign. There is significant evidence, much of it in the public domain, on the issue of collusion.
There's significant evidence available in the public domain, including that of collusion. I have yet to see it. The only thing all of this stuff proved was that Russian agents spent like $250,000 on some Facebook ads. That's it. That was the Russian collusion. That they had people buying Facebook ads, not for millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, like all campaigns do. They spent a few $1,000s on promoting anti-Hillary Clinton stuff. And there was also evidence that they were also producing anti-Trump stuff. But we don't hear about that so much, do we? Are we going to watch the rest of that clip of Adam Schiff? All right, I'm ready. You ready? Play tape. Yeah, the other one, the Adam Schiff, the one we were just playing. He's got more lies and more misinformation to share. Right there.
Sadly, from a very early point in the investigation, the chairman made the decision that his mission was not to find out what Russia did, not to determine the role of U.S. persons, but rather to endeavor to distract the public, to put the government on trial. That problem persisted throughout our investigation and has led to its premature conclusion last night. But the work is too important to leave undone. In particular, the American people need to know whether the Russians still have something they can hold over the president's head, the President of the United States. So our work is far from done, and we will be submitting to the public a detailed account of what we have learned to date and the work that has to be done, if not by us, then by others.
It's 3 years later. I still haven't seen this, Mr. Schiff. I mean, that is a portrait of evil, those three guys right there. I mean, and then he's got excuses. Why they keep ending these investigations? Oh, it was premature because of it was an anti-government campaign, disinformation campaign. All these people hated Trump because he wanted to drain the swamp. If there was anything there, believe you me, we would have got it. We hear from everybody, from Brennan to Schlapp to Swalwell to Comey. Mueller, they all hated Trump. They wanted to find something so bad, and they couldn't. Do you know how squeaky clean Trump must have been for them not to find something on him? It's really, I mean, the effort, the money, the time that so many human resources went into finding dirt on Trump, and we barely found anything. And I'm showing you how they're twisting his words, whether it's Charlottesville or January 6th or anything. It just proves how dishonest they are. And if that doesn't turn people's hearts, I don't know what would. I mean, either the brainwashing is so strong or the misinformation campaign was so successful. Nonetheless, here we go. Next story from a year ago. This is still available online, proving that the lab leak theory is either totally false or very, 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 very likely to be false. Let's hear what they were saying a year ago about the lab leak theory. Play tape.
Wuhan seafood market. On January 1st, it was shut down. Many of the early cluster of confirmed cases had been in the market, so officials feared that COVID-19 was linked to trade in wild animals. It sold everything from snakes to birds, foxes, and rabbits. But the viruses most similar to the new coronavirus that causes COVID-19 are from bats that live in caves 1,000 miles away. But just because they're similar doesn't mean they're the same.
I just am baffled about this story.
As of late April, experts don't have all the information they need to say where the virus started.
If the Chinese know evidence, of course, they're not telling us or anybody else.
The absence of crucial evidence comes many theories. One is that it came from nature, which scientists say seems most likely. Another theory is that it was a bioweapon, which scientists say there's zero evidence for.
I guess without putting too fine a point on it, it would fall in the realm of conspiracy theory.
We're going to focus on one theory that both U.S. intelligence and lawmakers are examining, that the virus accidentally escaped from a lab.
All right. I mean, first of all, they're here to debunk that theory. This is over a year ago. People are baffled that it could even be considered this. Let me just remind you, the previous 12 or 20 or forever, all the previous pandemics that we've had, all the viruses that spread throughout the world, especially in the 20th century and 21st century, have been able to be tracked back to patient zero always within a year, usually within a couple of months. They're always able to find patient zero, which obviously helps in finding cures or vaccines or treatments for it. Yet, still here we are. We're still being told it's probably coming from a bat. Yet, 16, 17, 18 months later, we still have zero evidence of any linkage, which if it truly did come from nature, we would have found it by now. At least in my opinion and my research of other pandemics. Can we fast forward to like 308? Oh, no. Fast forward to 646. Awesome. Play tape.
There's no way this virus came from us.
China's been incredibly open, and I believe it's because it's a scientific collaboration. And in China, they're really proud of their science. They do good work, especially in virology.
The evidence that a lab accident led to the release of the virus that causes COVID-19 is circumstantial, but speculation has heightened because of the actions of Chinese officials. First, before the Chinese government had even alerted the World Health Organization to the growing epidemic, scientists were told to destroy early samples of the virus, according to the Straits Times.
Oh, that's not suspicious. And you notice before she says this evidence of China destroying the evidence, Peter Daszak is there, who is Fauci's right hand and China's right hand and the WHO's right hand. Peter Daszak is the glue that puts everything together, talks about how transparent and open and kind the Chinese government was. And then they follow it up contradicting it. Can we fast forward to 8:45? I don't want to bore everybody with all the details, just the important stuff that they need to see. Good to go? As long as it's close. Play tape.
These labs, without early patient samples, there's no way to be sure. The balance of scientific evidence strongly suggests the conclusion that the new coronavirus emerged from nature, be it in the Wuhan market or somewhere else. Too many perfect coincidences would have had to take place for it.
Too many perfect coincidences. So, too many perfect coincidences would have to take place for it to escape from a lab. As in one coincidence, somebody had it on their person, wasn't careful, and went outside. That's too crazy of a coincidence. But the more likely coincidence is something that only happens in bats, and then if it was to transfer to human, it would usually take years for it to adapt to the human species and actually become a pandemic. And being that the wet market is hundreds of miles away from where these bats are originated, and all these things are a very much more likely coincidence. But the coincidence of somebody accidentally escaping from the lab, or the coincidence of it being done on purpose as a bioweapon, those coincidences are way too far-fetched for us to even consider. Yet the scientific oddity of it jumping from a bat to a person without an intermediary, without being able to find patient zero, and knowing that the Chinese government destroyed their earliest lab samples that may or may not connect the lab to the actual coronavirus that we're seeing today, yeah, that's too far-fetched for us to even consider. There's more misinformation out there. Our favorite provider of misinformation. I don't know how this guy continues to win his seat in government, but I mean, if they're going to kick Trump off of all of social media, this guy should have been kicked off a long time ago, especially as he keeps promising to provide evidence of crap that he is just making up in his head. Here we go. Russian bounties, which almost brought us to war. Democrats were pushing for Trump to take military action against Russia because of this falsified story. Please, play tape.
What have we got so far?
Unexplained death.
There are no witnesses.
Nothing.
I have a theory. Anything you care to share with us? No.
This is Professor Tempest. He's a consultant criminologist.
My interest in crime is purely academic. I do not like to get my hands dirty.
Jasper is a little odd.
We could really do with your help.
I'll certainly give it some thought.
He has an absolutely forensic brain.
Professor T. Watch now on PBS.
Today, the White House briefed congressional Republicans on intelligence reports that Russia paid Taliban fighters, as we've been reporting, to attack U.S. forces in Afghanistan, amid bipartisan concern about the president's statement that he had not been told about the intelligence. We'll get to congressional leaders' response in a moment, but first, Nick Schifrin reports new details on Russian bounty payments that U.S. officials fear killed U.S. troops.
In April 2019, a bomb planted by the Taliban in this spot killed 3 U.S. Marines, and intelligence officials investigated whether this American blood was on Russian hands. Last year, the Taliban are believed to have received Russian military intelligence money to target U.S. service members, former military and intelligence officials tell PBS NewsHour. The payments were discovered by information taken from Taliban leaders and when U.S. Special Operations Forces found a large amount of American money during a Taliban raid. It was a dramatic increase in Russian support to the Taliban, already described in 2018 by then U.S. Commander General John Nicholson.
We've had weapons brought to this headquarters and given to us by Afghan leaders and said this was given by the Russians to the Taliban. We know that the Russians are involved.
Today, the Kremlin called that statement and today's reports, quote, lies. But former U.S. intelligence officials say in the last 2 years, as Americans trained Afghan forces, and fought the Taliban, Russian involvement was always a collection priority and was always briefed up to senior levels. But today, White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany reiterated President Trump had never been briefed.
The CIA director, NSA...
All right, first of all, Trump was never briefed at that time because it's an untrue story. And before you start bringing intelligence to the president, you need to verify it's true. Number two, finding money in Afghanistan does not prove it. First of all, they didn't find Russian rubles. They found American dollars. And anybody who knows anybody who served over in the Middle East, I had one of my best friends was over there, and he was a captain. And he says in his office, he had a pallet with a couple $1 million. Because that's how we did business over there. We had money there, so anytime we needed to hire a spy, to pay for information, to purchase weapons for anti-Taliban forces, whatever the case may be, the U.S. military constantly had tons of cash on hand to do what they had to do to get the mission accomplished. All right? So just because you find a Russian weapon, a Balishnikov or an AK-47, doesn't mean that the Russians are paying bounties. Number two, I don't think Russians would be paying bounties in American dollars. Number three, the whole thing was a hoax. The way they treated the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we'll get to in just a second, is the way they should have treated the Russian bounty story. And the way they treated the Russian bounty story is the way they should have treated the Hunter Biden laptop story, which turned out to be true, and the bounty story turned out to be false. And anybody with a with a smidgen of common sense and logic could have figured out the likelihood of truthfulness in both of those stories, where the bounty story never held any water. It was just a rumor. And the Biden laptop story, we had hard evidence of it being true. And even if you thought the laptop was fake, the emails, the pictures, the pornography, it was definitely Hunter. So even if it was a fake laptop, there's real video of Hunter Biden doing drugs and having sex and sending emails, peddling influence. But yet we're crazy, right? Do you want to fast forward to 3:08 so we don't have to make everybody watch this whole video? All right, but let's just continue with this about the bounty story. And this PBS channel. First of all, I'm sorry you had to listen to a commercial. I don't understand. My tax dollars are paying for this channel, Public Broadcasting Systems. And this state-run media is so anti-Republican and pro-Democrat. How can our government pay for a news channel that's so biased? I understand we should have a state-run media where we could just get official reports about what's going on in the government. But it's like the most biased, slanted piece of media, and our tax dollars are paying for it. This woman and this dude, Adam Schiff. I mean, the two of these people are so anti-American, anti-free speech, anti-freedom in general, and they are state-run media. It's really disgusting. Let's get through it as fast as we can. Play tape.
Believe happened here?
Well, we want to get the full answers from the intelligence agencies. We've asked them to come in and physically brief our committee. The Speaker has asked for a full House briefing on this as well. We want to know, are the Russians offering bounties to kill American troops? And if they are, why is the president still seeking to have Russia brought into the G8? Why is he giving Russia that favored status, welcoming them into the community of nations, and maintaining this cozy relationship with Putin? That's not how we ought to treat a country that is trying to kill our people in Afghanistan. So we want to get the full intel briefing on these allegations and find out whether this was part of the president's daily brief, and if the intelligence agencies are still not briefing the president, why they're not briefing him. Is this an issue where they cannot tell the president things he doesn't want to hear when it comes to Vladimir Putin and Russia.
I mean, can you spin a story anymore? The reason the president wasn't briefed is because it wasn't confirmed to be true, because it wasn't true. But yet you're trying to turn it into some sort of collusion and you don't want to tell Trump what he doesn't want to hear? Give me a flippin' break, man. You're trying to sway the hearts and minds of Americans to hate their president. Just like you're trying to do it in schools for kids to hate our country or to hate each other or divide us by race or political. This is division. This is misinformation designed to divide us. And yet, we continue to hear more. This guy, Adam Schiff, is on every single news station peddling every single false story, and he's still in office. Here we go. Let's talk about the, let's hear what they have to say first before I blow up their story. Play tape.
Origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
Bullshit.
Serious questions tonight about whether the Russians are using Rudy Giuliani to interfere in the U.S. presidential election. CNN senior national security correspondent Alex Marquardt is joining us. Alex, there are fears that what Giuliani is now pushing here in the United States could actually be part of Russia's latest and very massive disinformation campaign in the U.S. presidential election.
Massive indeed, Wolf. We do know that it's a very active Russian campaign. That's according to the U.S. intelligence community, and that Rudy Giuliani already had open contact with a person that the U.S. has called an agent for the Kremlin. Now, we are being told by two people who've been briefed on what the FBI is doing. That
We're being told by two people who've been briefed on what the FBI is doing. That
they're looking into whether these unverified emails about Hunter Biden that were published earlier this week by the New York Post about his business dealings in Ukraine and China are part of this bigger Russian disinformation effort in the 2020 election. Now, those efforts, according to the intelligence community, are to denigrate the Biden campaign and the former vice president in favor of President Trump.
Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Does it surprise you at all that this information Rudy Giuliani is peddling very well could be connected to some sort of Russian government disinformation campaign?
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. And, you know, the idea that the president, that the White House counsel and others were made aware that Giuliani was being used by Russian intelligence and using Russian intelligence in the sense of meeting with an agent of the Kremlin and pushing out this Kremlin false narrative. The idea that they were knowing and still on the floor of the Senate during the impeachment trial, pushing this Kremlin narrative is pretty breathtaking. But I guess at this point, we can't be shocked by anything this administration does, no matter how craven. But clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
With me right now is the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. Adam Schiff, from the chairman of the Intel Committee, is out and about this weekend on Sunday morning shows saying all of this news is just Russian disinformation, and it's not true. You are the Director of National Intelligence. You see more intelligence than anybody in the country other than the President of the United States, so you can tell us what's real and what's fake. Is this Russian disinformation, Director?
So, Maria, it's funny that some of the people that complain the most about intelligence being politicized are the ones politicizing intelligence. And unfortunately, in this case, it is Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who, as you pointed out on Friday, said that the intelligence community believes that Hunter Biden's laptop and the emails on it are part of some Russian disinformation campaign. Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Chairman Schiff or any other member of Congress that Hunter Biden's laptop is part of some Russian disinformation campaign.
All right. So they're just peddling lies. And like I said, this is how they should have treated the bounty scandal. But no. And also I want to thank this obscure YouTube channel, Truth Seeker, because you can't find the original coverage of most of these things. You know, when the internet first came out, news agencies used to archive all of their stories so you could look it up. CNN, Washington Post, they're deleting their old news stories so you can't find them anymore. Whether you're talking about NBC News hiding the pediatricians that said they would definitely send their kids to school in person, or you're talking about trying to find when Adam Schiff said, I remember the news conference specifically where he said we have tons of indisputable evidence against Trump, and after the investigation is over, we will provide it to the public, which he never did. These are all just blatant lies to steer people politically. This is the definition. This is my definition of misinformation or disinformation or false information, or best put, propaganda from the Democratic Party. All right? Yet, they all cover for Biden. So therefore, when we ask Biden what's going on, he could respond in kind. So this is Joe Biden as he's trying to get ready for Election Day, 2 weeks before Election Day. This is Joe Biden's excuse for Hunter Biden's laptop. His son, with evidence of Hunter Biden working with Joe Biden, paying Joe Biden's bills with his peddle for influence money, which means Joe Biden, even if it was just a $50 cell phone bill, it's still the candidate, now President of the United States, receiving money through illegal means. Play tape.
The Americans who really today only want me to ask you about Hunter Biden's laptop. How are you going to get them to see that you are fighting for them when they're so dead set against you?
There's nothing to any of that. Nothing to any of that. It's all a smear. Every major outfit, every serious investigator has pointed out that this is a smear. This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. And you may recall, there's also talk about 4 months before there was a similar thing that somebody had, allegedly. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged. I mean, look, my son's an honorable man, and all the investigations that were done around the issue of what was going on in Ukraine, if you notice, every one of the major people who worked for Trump during the impeachment went under oath, and under oath said Biden did his job. No law was broken. This Biden did his job. Hunter Biden broke no laws. That was the testimony, their testimony from Republicans and intelligence community people. So I think that it's, I just think, look, politics has become too crass, too dirty, too ugly. And the perpetrator of an awful lot of this has been, he didn't start it all, but he has taken it to a new level, this president.
All right, number one, do you guys notice that less than a year ago, Joe Biden could talk to the press a little bit? He has deteriorated a lot in the last 8 months. I mean, he wasn't great. He's not super smooth or nothing. He wasn't as good as he was 5 years ago or 30 years ago. But he was at least able to put together a couple of sentences. He can't do that anymore. Just looking at that video reminds me of how much he's deteriorated just in the past 8 months. No offense. I'm not, trying to be mean to an old man, but he is the president of the United States. Number two, you see everything that he was told is now false. He's just repeating the lies of it's Russian disinformation and Hunter is just a wonderful boy, and then Hunter releases a book talking about how unwonderful he actually was. Final point. If we use 10% of the resources we used to go after Trump to find nothing, to look into Joe and Hunter and Joe's brothers and all their dealings, if we find out about, these art shows and everything else, we would find out so much more horrible things about the Bidens than we would about the Trumps. Now, I understand most politicians have some dirty secrets, but Joe Biden has been in government for 50 years. His son and his brother have been profiting from Joe Biden's position their entire lives. Why won't we look into that the same way we looked into Trump? Or let's just call it an even playing field. Let's all admit that Trump is a pretty stand-up. You might not like his personality and stuff, but he's the furthest thing from a criminal because everybody looked into every single crook and crevice and were unable to find something to hold him accountable for. Anyway, I just wanted to show you guys what disinformation looks like. Please, if you like our videos, I need you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Spotify. Look me up on Facebook, The Johnny Brew Show, or go to my little news page, Common Sense Nevada, where throughout the week, I'll provide you with the stories you might not be hearing on the mainstream media. You could also contact us at TheJohnnyBruShow@gmail.com, or you could always text us, 702-682-9983. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you guys next week. And don't forget, next week we have Danielle Ford, CCSD trustee, letting us know what to expect on the upcoming school year regarding coronavirus, curriculum, anti-racism policy, and the whole enchilada. Thanks again. We'll see you next week on The Johnny Brew Show.